A lawyer will do anything to win a case, they say. Sometimes he will even tell the truth. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. We've invited two young lawyers and two veteran lawyers today on the show to discuss about what is the need of the hour. Is it an election? Joining us this evening on the show is Attorney at Law Charit Galhena, contesting under the NPP ticket at the upcoming elections. Also joining us tonight on the show is Attorney at Law Tharaka Nanayakkara, contesting under the Samaga Jana Balawega ticket. Joining us this evening after a lapse of a few weeks is Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Counsel, former President of the Bar Association of the country. Also joining us tonight on the show is Attorney at Law, Mr. Chandana Liyenapatabeni. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on the show. Let's start off tonight's show with Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Counsel, former President of the Bar Association of the country. Mr. De Silva, on the 21st of April, when you appeared on the show, the number of infected persons with regard to COVID-19 stood less than 400. Now the number stands at a staggering 1,182. Isn't it prudent for the President, at least now, to declare a state of emergency in the country and reconvene Parliament, at least for the betterment of the future prospects of this nation? The time starts now.
Firstly, I must say that no, it is not necessary. Because, as you said, now the number you mentioned, that 400 to 1,000, if you compare it, it is quite clear that at the moment, only 426, according to your news, 400 round figure, and 695 are there. They have gone out from the hospital and the quarantine centers as well. So only 400 odd people are there. That is also, now the number is going up on what basis? We have allowed the Kuwait people to come into this country, and then we want them because they are our Sri Lankan people. So we allow them to come in, and then we send them to quarantine centers. Then only we found that they are suffering this particular.
If there is not a state of emergency in the country, why impose curfew from 10 p.m. in the night up until 4 a.m. in the morning?
That is
what is the reason behind it?
That is what the circular says. That now, as I told you, the right beginning, I'm going to give you this particular act because you were concerned about these acts, and this was in 1895, Act number 3 of 1895. So from that onwards, we have come across a lot of changes and then a lot of gazette notifications. Then recently, after this coronavirus came into the Sri Lanka, they have imposed these gazette notifications, and then the important factor would be, as you quite correctly pointed out, the health, Director Health. He has issued several guidelines to the police. Now, this particular minister concerned is going to give powers to the director, and then thereafter, the director is going to give the powers to various institutions. And the police are the same. They are the people.
No, but the Director General of Health is not the competent authority in Sri Lanka to decide or not whether to hold an election in the country.
No, he is not the authority, but he should give the necessary guidelines.
But his U-turn is not going to affect the future aspirations of the political parties or even the Elections Commission at present, right, Mr. De Silva?
No, what I say is now we are waiting the final outcome from the Director of Health, because he has given.
But he is not the competent authority in Sri Lanka.
What I'm saying is, Samir, now he is not the competent authority, but it is important at this stage that he must come forward and give the guidelines how to conduct the election. Then the Election Commission will take over, and thereafter they will proceed. The Election Commission is the more important person, and even the President can't do anything at this stage. The Election Commission should take control, and before that, they have to consult the medical authorities and then the security authorities as well. So thereafter, only they can come to a conclusion whether they are going to have a on another date. Now, I am definitely sure that we can't have 20th of June as the election date, because at this stage we have to have more time to get ready for the election. We have to give them the candidates these two to get prepared. So for that purpose, Election Commission is going to give more time, and after getting, now they are waiting for the result of the case also. The Election Commission has stated that we are not going to announce the date till the case is concluded.
No, but based on this particular act that you're talking about, which has been passed many, many years ago, who is the competent authority to decide whether or not the country is ready or geared up to hold an election?
This is with regard to coronavirus incident. So we are having this pandemic situation. Then the authority is the person who is their director general.
But who is the authority?
Director general is the person who has the authority with regard to the present situation, and then the election commission should go forward. They are the authority.
No, I'm asking you this question, Ms. De Silva, because we know that how the GMOA was very vocal at one point about the health situation in the country and also making sure that COVID-19 does not spread. However, right now, I don't know what the reason is, probably maybe for political reasons, the GMO is very silent on the current situation in the country. And you saw the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasing, who has done a tremendous job over the last few months, suddenly taking a sudden U-turn about holding an election under strict guidelines. So you see these things happening, and these submissions were made to the Supreme Court a couple of days ago as well, when the FIR petitions were considered. So you're trying to wonder, where are we right now? We are standing on a ledge, and we are trying to dictate terms saying, guess what, we will hold an election without thinking about the health and safety of the people of Sri Lanka.
No, we need the parliament. That is the main issue here, because without the parliament we can't proceed. Merely because we need the parliament, that does not mean we should call the earlier parliament. That is not correct, because now they have already decided, President has already decided that I am not going to do it, because he has the discretionary power. So if he is not going to use that discretionary power, then nobody can challenge it, because he has done anything wrong up to now. According to the Constitution, 70, clause 70, subsection 6, it is very clear that he has the power to call the election, parliament again. Yeah. But if he wishes that there is an emergency, and with regard to that emergency, Parliament can do something. Then only he can.
Thank you very much, Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Council, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. I now move my attention to Attorney at Law Tharaka Nanayakkara contesting under the Samaggi Jana Balawegaya at the upcoming elections, if an election is held in the near future. Tharaka, interestingly, when a few weeks ago, it seemed that there was a strong opposition against holding an election, and convening of the parliament was the order of the day. The old parliament was the order of the day. However, now it seems that the UNP is slanting somewhat towards the government. Samaggi Jana Balawegaya seems to be the lone fighter, the lone elephant in this entire battle. Why not go for an election? Is it because of fear that you all may lose the upcoming elections? The time starts now.
Thank you, Shamir. I think it's a very interesting time that you all have got us to speak on a very interesting issue. Who is shunning away from an election? Not us. Once a party hands over nominations to contest elections, that is a clear manifestation of their intention to fight and run and perhaps win or lose. But we are in the game. However, the corona or the COVID-19 pandemic, which started spreading at a very fast rate in Sri Lanka upon the handing of nominations, the whole process stalled. So it is not about us, not about Samaggi Jana Balawegaya, not about the SLPP, not about the UNP fighting an election anymore. It is about a nation trying to fight a global pandemic in our own setting. So I would like to say that even if the elections are held on the 20th of June, we will fight it. There's no problem. However, who is going to be held accountable if the very decision to hold an election would cause or would aggravate the spreading of COVID-19. Who are to be blamed? A year ago, they used to talk about walking bombs. Now the politicians will become walking bombs if the elections are declared as in this current situation. Politicians, the contestants have no option but to go canvassing. They have no option but to go and fight the campaign in their respective electorates. Who's going to take the responsibility?
But in the government's defense, the government could say that they don't have a majority in parliament, hence they can't bring in any bills, any expenditure heads to the parliament because it will be defeated. So what is the point of reconvening parliament? Why not go in for a fresh parliament? As Mr. De Silva said, the president has no inclination whatsoever to summon the old parliament.
To answer your question with a question, Shamir, did the president have any inclination to lock down the country on the 18th of March when he said, we have only 28 cases of COVID-19, we are not going to lock down the country for 28 cases. So he had to go back. Now, what we must look at is whether the opposition is going to cooperate with the government. Clearly, the opposition has a majority and the government was a minority government. But would any sane opposition oppose any measures taken by the government for the betterment of the country?
No, any sane opposition like won't do, but any sane politicians in the old parliament may do it. You never know.
But you see, the test is very close. Even if we reconvene the parliament, even if we do so, it will be for a very short while. It will be, President has all the authority under Article 70, subsection 7 of the Constitution, if he so wishes. He is the deciding authority. If he so wishes, we can't force it upon him. But the former opposition leader, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, has given a very clear assurance that we will not, as the opposition, because UNP had 84 odd members on its own, out of that a massive majority of about 90% of the former MPs are running under the SJB ticket, who are directly commanded by Honorable Sajith Premadasa, the former opposition leader. He gives an assurance that we will give the requisite majority. It's up to the president to convene the parliament or not, but he's running the risk of violating the constitution, because clearly, I'm not an expert, though I'm an attorney at law, I'm not an expert on the constitution, but clearly, at least in 3 places in this constitution of Sri Lanka, it is mentioned that the new parliament should be convened within 3 months from the dissolution of the old parliament.
Thank you very much. Attorney at law Tharak Nayak contesting under the Samagya Jana Balawegaya. We now move our attention to attorney at law Chandana Liena Patabandi. Chandana, interestingly, the National Elections Commission requested the president to go in for a Supreme Court determination whether or not to summon parliament. And also with regard to the convening of the parliament as well. However, the elections, the president's secretary wrote a very strongly worded letter to the Elections Commission saying that is not our problem, that is your problem, you sort it out. Don't you think that this situation would have been settled amicably if the president did resort to a verdict from the Supreme Court with regard to the constitutionality of the summoning of the parliament?
No, because with all due respect to the two respective authorities that you have mentioned, the Commission and the President, the Commission at that time, that was on the 31st of March and the 1st of April, they have written. They have written and asked the President to invoke the jurisdiction under the consultative jurisdiction, and then at that time, the election was to be held on another day, because by then, they have decided that they can't have the election on a day because of the coronavirus outbreak situation, not because of anybody want to play cricket on the election commission's premises, because of a pandemic situation. So under those circumstances, when they asked what the president's secretary, actually I don't hold any proxy for anybody, but what the communication said was, there is an section in the Parliamentary Election Act. Have it on another day. You just name it. Don't tell us to go and ask the President, Supreme Court, but there is nothing to be asked at that time. But at that time, it was well within the law to have another date. So that was the duty of the commission, and the commission adhered to it, because that was the 9th April was the communication from the President Secretary. And then they adhered to it, and they have named 20th of June as the next date. Later on only they say that even on that day they can't have it.
Now, Chandana, isn't it a joke, or isn't it a mere joke to see that even the Elections Commission at the Supreme Court right now being represented by 2 lawyers? You have 2 members who are being represented by 1 lawyer, that is Salih Peris, and you have another member of the Elections Commission being represented by another lawyer. So we are talking about these independent commissions being established in Sri Lanka. Now it seems that how independent are these commissions at the end of the day?
Because the 19th amendment to the constitution, which was brought in the 15th of May 2015, after the president's election, just before the parliament election, they have introduced this. When they have created that independent commission, that was to be truly independent, because that is the only commission where under the Constitutional Council, where the president cannot appoint anybody unless the Constitutional Council nominates them. So they have been nominated, and that the 3 persons, or even we say 2 persons, no, they are not the commission. It is the commission is that statutory body. So these individual persons, individual commissioners cannot retain lawyers. That's my personal view. But I must say that because we are invited to speak very openly about it. It is the commission, only commission can retain a counsel, but the individuals cannot, unless they are coming under
but
private capacity.
But we know that the Attorney General's Department refused to appear for the National Elections Commission as well. And now you've been in the game for many years now, Chandana. That's why I'm posing this question to you.
No, but the simple answer the Honorable Attorney General said was, in a time when a question is about holding the election on some other day, it's about the date game. Why do I have to go and appear?
No,
what do I have to say?
My question
and
is...
at the same time, sometime may be busy because they were to appear for the Honorable, the Excellency President of the Republic. Maybe because of that, because they can't, then they will have a conflict of interest.
My point is, we are at a time that every penny counts. Who is paying for these lawyers? Because we know when it comes to the Attorney General's Department, they are supposed to appear for the state. So who's paying these lawyers? Probably they're doing it without money for the interest of the National Elections Commission. I don't know that. I'm not privy to that information. However, who's paying for them?
I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to answer that.
Right.
But my view is the commission can appoint a lawyer to represent them, but not the individual.
Right. Thank you very much.
There is nothing called individual members in a court of law, even in the society.
Thanks a lot, Attorney at Law Chandana Liana Patabandi, for joining us this evening for the first time on Face the Nation.
Thank you.
We now move our attention to Attorney at Law Charit Galhena, contesting under the NPP ticket at the upcoming elections. Charit, the NPP is represented by the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, which was a very vociferous, vocal political party in the old parliament, as well as the parliaments that we've seen for many years now, many decades now. And the JP is always in the forefront to file cases, to file FR petitions, and we've seen that happening. However, in the case of this time around, calling of the elections on the 20th of June, the JVP is very silent. It seems that they've let the big men battle it out, and is a silent watcher of what's happening in the battlefield, isn't it?
Firstly, JVP is part of
the NPP, yes.
National People's Power.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's not that we have been silent. We have raised our voice. Even in your same program, our voice has been clearly, our position has been clearly stated. If the question is why the JVP has not gone for an action, I think I might not be able to answer that. That answer has to come from the JVP itself. But then answering why NPP has not gone for an action on this, one thing is it's very clear now, so many petitions that have been filed with regard to the date of the election has been withdrawn. Once the commission has made a clear statement on the fact that elections cannot be held on the 20th of June. So as we started this discussion, elections won't take place on the 20th of June and there would be time for the elections to take place. That is one thing. So if our rights are violated, one area where the rights can be violated is that we are not being given enough time to go for a campaign, because we are looking at the franchise of the people, and that franchise includes the right to campaign. And then the second thing is whether the parliament should be convened. I think convening the parliament, the provisions are very clear. Provisions are very clear.
Now, does the NPP believe that the parliament should convene? Because coming and expressing your views in a panel or even a discussion does not really tell you or portray the real motive behind the NPP. So what is the motive behind the NPP? Do they want to summon parliament, or don't they want to summon parliament, or they want to go for a quick election or a snap poll? Let
me put it this way. It's not that we want to convene or summon the parliament.
What do you all want to do?
If you go to the basics of this constitution or the foundation of this entire state, foundation of this republic, the foundation is the continuous existence of the legislation. It is a continuing thing. It doesn't cease to function. It doesn't cease to hold. Section 70, subsection 7 is very clear. Even upon dissolution of parliament, the parliament is still alive. If there is a situation of emergency, that parliament, president can summon that parliament. That provision is very clear. That provision
so why isn't the president summoning parliament if the provisions are very clear? He probably has some good legal advisors backing him as well.
It might not be the legal advice, but it might be political reasons. It might be political reasons.
So you're saying
the same reason that you asked Taraka as to there being a minority government. But my position is not that. Now look at the situation.
Before coming to that, so are you trying to say that it is not Gotabaya Rajapaksa who is running the country, it is someone else who is running the country?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is...
You just said that he is taking decisions based on his political affiliations. That's what you said. And that's why I posed a question to you back. So who do you think is running the country?
That I think.
Your smile says a lot of things. Sorry.
So let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Let's get this entire situation
Seems like
clear.
Fear has engulfed you, Charit, as a very young lawyer.
No. What I'm trying to say is this. Yeah. Let me put it this way. Right? Now we know that now the provisions are clear that the parliament, after dissolution by the president, has to convene, has to be summoned within 3 months from dissolution. That provision is clear. And it is clear that the new parliament cannot be summoned within that 3 months period of time. And you look at the state finances, the vote on account is only till April this year. And then some people look at provision article 150 subsection 3. Now there is a situation that the new parliament cannot sit within the 3 months time period given, and then there is an emergency situation in the country. What is that emergency? Now there might be the number of active cases of COVID-19 might have reduced. It might be true that new reported cases are not within the clusters in the public. That might be true.
It's not a community spread.
It's not a community spread. That might be true. But then look at the situation of the country. So many people have lost their employment overseas. Industries has lost their businesses. people, companies can't function. Companies are looking at VRS packages.
So we'll speak about the country's economy in a minute.
So what I'm trying to say is, there is an emergency situation. There is a situation where the president himself and his secretaries and his officials can't provide for.
Right.
There is a situation where the parliament has to sit together and decide.
Right. Thank you
So
very
it is
much.
very clear that whether it's new parliament or old parliaments, a legislative body has to sit, has to convene.
Thank you very much.
So that is very clear.
Thank you very much, Arif, for joining us this evening. Again, first time on the show. Before I open the floor for questions from our journalists, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds if you may respond to this question again. Who do you think is running the country? You don't have to answer that question, but I'm anyway going to
No,
pose
that's
that
a-
question
that's
to you
very-
again
that-
because
that's
I
a
didn't
very
get
good
clear
question.
Answer for that.
Who should be running the country? Let me ask you back, who should be running the country?
Thank you very much.
Who should be running the country?
So thanks a lot, Charit. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position today to answer a question. I would have loved to if I was a part of the panel. Let me open the floor for questions. We have Deshan Gonawala joining us after a very, very long time, and also Nadim Majid, who's one of our regulars on the show. So let's start off with Deshan.
Thanks, Shamir. I think I want to pose my first question. Mr. Nanayakkara, a very interesting topic is how much politicians tend to care about people. So I'll start off with that. You brought up a very interesting point, which is that the politicians can take death, or in this case COVID, to the public. And that is one of the key concerns behind why Mr. Premadasa and the party you represent, why they feel that having an election may not be in the best interest. Wasn't that same risk present when you all were protesting in Kalutara a few days ago?
I think, again, very interesting question, Deshan. And to be very honest, whether it's us or whether it's Minister Dalasala Peruma having meetings in Matara, or whether if it's the NPP, whoever who does it, at this point we have to be careful. I think it was a mistake. I'm not mincing my words here. Protest is essential. Protest was for a very valid cause. Honorable former Minister of Health Rajitha Senaratne we consider his case as a political issue. So the protest was right, and it was constitutional, and it was legal. However, the method it was carried out was questionable, and we don't need to mince words. I don't agree with the way it was carried out.
Absolutely. Mr. De Silva, I want to ask you a slightly more different question, one pertaining to your domain, which is law. See, don't you think that if the president was to reconvene the parliament and then reissue a gazette notification or a proclamation dissolving it once again, that we wouldn't have half the problems we are having? Is this not politically motivated by the look of it?
At this stage, you must look at the point in a broad way. Why we are asking the president to recall the parliament again? So for the sake of calling, or is there any necessity? On the 21st of April, when we are discussing this, when we were here, it was brought out that new laws should be brought in. But I think up to now, we have gone on the same old act, and then with the new amendments, and then the gazette notification.
Right.
So we can say that right through, I was of the view that these laws are quite enough. So now it is proved. So now the second question is with regard to the monetary transaction, whether the president has the power to use the money. So it is very clear. At this stage also, I would say 150 subsection 3, my learned friend brought this section. So it is if you go through it very carefully. Now, earlier government, that the person who was handling the monetary transaction, that he never brought the necessary documents and show to the parliament how they are going to distribute the money. We need that particular, that's why every end of the year we should have that particular document. And we argue that in the parliament, and thereafter they give the permission to go ahead with the money. So that was not there. And then the other important factor would be that whether the parliament has given money to do the day-to-day expense. It was there up to 30th. So what is the next step?
You know, Mr. Silva, I think Deshan's question is, I think if I may, Deshan,
Yes.
with your permission, the question is whether these decisions that are being taken right now, are they not politically motivated? Because I can give you a classic example. If you look at the landscape right now, the political landscape right now, there is President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who has been elected with a majority last year. There is no question about that. Then you have the Prime Minister, who is the President's brother. Then you have Basil Rajapaksa, who is the head of the task force, also now handling the money with relating to COVID-19. So as a citizenry, we want to know, where is this money going? This is being entrusted with the three brothers, and that is the very reason people didn't want such a combination at the 2015 presidential election. And that is why the people went in for a new government. Whether or not that government did their job is a big question mark, but that is the reason. And they have to be held accountable
That's
for this
right.
money.
So you have every opportunity to do that. The president or his brothers cannot use their money on their own.
But
They
they've
have-
done in the past.
No, that's a different matter. I don't think it is correct to say that, because everybody is liable. We have all past previous convictions are there with regard to everybody. They are inside the parliament at the moment. So I don't want to talk that, because it is not correct to do that, because they are not being convicted yet.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there are rumors, but at the moment, as you said, there may be some dialogue with regard to those transactions. But it is very clear in the Constitution itself, 154 subsection 3, where the Auditor General comes into play. So he has every power to go into these things. And once the new parliament is summoned, all transactions should be brought in, and it will be argued. And we can see what is happening there.
And then let's discuss about spilt milk.
No, that is not correct, because at then and there, you can't ask what are you doing and how you spend the money. You can't ask that question. Even the parliament is there. It will be called, and they will say we will submit the necessary document at the right moment. The right
Mr.
moment would
Liana
be
Perabandi, I want to come to you, Mr. Liana Perabandi.
Yes, sir.
See, as somebody who has again worked within the legal framework for a long period of time, you've seen governments come and go, I'm sure. See, oppositions, they tend to be reactive to what the government does, and react and potentially bring out the voice of the people with regard to whatever they have to say. Do you not think, particularly in ensuring that a country is stable in moving forward, and in ensuring that there are no collisions in terms of like the path the government is taking, or potential constitutional deadlock maybe, that the president and the government have a responsibility to be proactive?
Certainly, because there is a government in power.
Correct.
Because there is a president who has been elected by the people few months ago.
Correct.
And then within the power given to him by the constitution, yes, dissolve the parliament.
Right.
Then there is still the government, because the caretaker government is there. The cabinet of ministers together with him is governing.
I
that
think
is the form of government. So there is a government in power.
you're not hearing my question.
Yeah.
My question is about the fact that an opposition can afford to be reactive,
Yes.
but a government is duly responsible to be proactive. At the point where certain decisions were made by certain commissions, as the responsible authority, do you not think it was the responsibility of the president to be proactive in seeking the opinion of the Supreme Court?
Certainly not at the first instance, because at that time it was in January, it was in December, it was March 31st and
Right.
April 1st.
Yeah.
So the 9th April answer was very correct.
Absolutely.
And that's my thinking. I was not part of anything, but I know that. But now the situation is different, because after they have renamed, upon receiving that response, they have rescheduled the election for the 20th. Now that they say last week to the Supreme Court, we heard it from the newspaper, that they cannot have the election even on that day.
At
So
the point
then-
where the 20th was announced.
Then there is a issue now.
Yeah.
Whether we can use this president's powers under Article 33 2C, or whether they can just merely use that, or whether we can change, whether the government should change the date to convene the new parliament. Because my answer is, yes, that may be the fit question to be asked now from the Supreme Court if they decide to do so. Because because there's a new situation, because even on the next date, they are not going to have that. Independent Election Commission is not going to have the election.
Right.
But then, Section 18 of the Interpretation Ordinance is very clear. It says, if the power is given to any authority to issue any order or a proclamation, they can likewise, within that time period, the limits given, they can reissue it. Section 18 of the Interpretation Act is very clear on that.
Before I hand over to Nadeem, I just want to...
just on that, Mr. Leonaparama, you said that if an authority has been given the power to issue a proclamation, that authority has the power to reissue that proclamation.
Yes.
Doesn't this also apply to the President's proclamation?
Yes.
It does. The President's initial proclamation dissolved the Parliament. So when the Election Commission, because this was an unprecedented situation with this pandemic, COVID-19. So when the Election Commission wrote to the President and said, we have a situation, we cannot have the election on the 25th, we are going to be in a situation where we cannot summon the new Parliament as per your directive by the 2nd of June, I believe. At that point, shouldn't the President have acted on that same advice that you have now given to the Election Commission, that they can, that as per the Interpretation Ordinance, the authority that issues a proclamation has the power to reissue that proclamation. The same applies for the Election Commission, it also applies to the President. The President can reissue that proclamation. And he could have resolved this impasse. So instead of creating a sort of a constitutional deadlock, to me, it just sounds like a failure of mediation and dispute resolution.
No, I think my earlier view, when I expressed to the learned moderator, still stands, because at that time, it was the 1st of April. At that time, there was a provision in the Parliamentary Elections Act, Section 24, subsection 3, to have the election date changed because of certain situations. So now, the Election Commission, they have rescheduled the date and they are saying no, they are not going to have it on that day because they can't send their government servants and their officers to the field. Under those circumstances, now that is the situation. That's what I say, either the President may, if so he decides, he can invoke the jurisdiction power under Section 18 of the Interpretation Ordinance. He can reissue, or he can also ask the Supreme Court to give their considered opinion as to whether he can reissue that acting under Section 18, because Section 70 situation is now passed. Section 70 is now passed.
Tharaka, should the President have reissued the proclamation at that first instance, when he was informed by the Election Commission that it was not possible, by no means possible, to hold an election on the 25th of April, and this was when the lockdown we were just a week or 2 weeks into the lockdown at that point, when the Election Commission informed the President that it's not going to be possible to have an election. At that point, should the President have taken the decision to withdraw and reissue the proclamation?
I think at that point, President was clearly aware that practically there was no way that an election could be held on the 25th of April. As my friend pointed out, I think it was Deshan or you, I can't recall, but as you all pointed out, a government needs to be proactive. The same applies to the President as well. And very clearly, the President has clear recourse to ask for a determination from the Supreme Court under Article 129, which he did not at the first instance. And as you mentioned earlier, even when the Elections Commission prompted or reminded the President's office that as the election cannot be held on the 25th of April, it is in the best interests of the general public that the matter be referred to the Supreme Court. The secretary to the president flatly refused to do so in a very rude letter of response, if I may say so. So I think, yes, they should have, and they have not. Because clearly, though my learned friend, President's Counsel, Liana Pattabandi mentioned that Section 70, Article 70's conditions have passed. No, clearly, this is the constitution of the country that we are talking about. Article 70 specifies in two places, in two subsections, that the new parliament has to be reconvened within 3 months. What is the intention of the legislature when they enacted these provisions?
So are you trying to say
Clearly.
that the president has violated the constitution?
Just a moment, Shamir, I'll come to that. Clearly, the intention of the legislators has been to ensure that there is a parliament, because our political system is founded upon 3 pillars: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, which ensures a system of checks and balances. And when the system proceeds without one pillar, it is clearly not the democratic system or the democratic process that we expect of a democratic government.
No, but do you think that the president has violated the constitution?
If he has, I suppose by not following section Article 70 in reconvening the parliament, or as President's Counsel Liana Pattabandi pointed out, reissuing the proclamation on time, taking the cue from his argument, I believe personally he may be accused of doing so.
No, but
maybe.
There is a notion now among the general public, and you see this in the social media as well. Why do we need a parliament? The president is doing a decent job. He's appointed some military individuals to high-ranking positions within government. The president is running the country absolutely fine without 225 members who are eyeing to gain momentum in their pockets when a parliament is summoned.
Shamir, this is the very mentality they tried to create after the Easter Sunday attacks. It has been terribly unfortunate incident which we don't even need to refer back to, and those who are responsible has to be tried and convicted, which we don't see any progress in, other than accusing people and taking people under the Prevention of Terrorism Act inside. However, I believe that prompt action should be taken to ensure that democracy is protected. What people say is what people are made to believe. That is the Goebbels theory. When you say something, when you state a falsehood for 1,000 times, it becomes the truth in the mind of the public.
Mr. Narayaka, right. I want to ask you a very simple question, and let's put law aside, let's speak logically. Global pandemic, do you see this pandemic eradicated in the next year from Earth? Do you see that as a practicality?
Can I borrow you another 60 seconds to complete my answer to Shamir, please? Right. So, therefore, this is what they are made to believe, that we don't need a parliament. But are we to run this country with army generals, with a president running the I don't think so, because the system of checks and balances, unless who's going to be held accountable? This is public money we are talking about. Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Counsel, pointed out about Article 150, subsection 3, which I have a different opinion on. I will go on to it at the next point. But these are public finances. These system of democracy is founded
But where is that accountability that you're talking about when the central bank bond controversy took place?
That is exactly why the United National Party government was defeated. That is one of the principal reasons that we lost credibility, and that should be dealt with according to the law. Now the opposition...
So given the current circumstances, it
Shamir,
seems that...
Shamir, give me a moment. Yeah. The opposition that was in place back then are in power now. And I would like to ask, what constructive action have they taken as a government to hold the so-called culprits of the bond scam accountable? What have they done?
I'll give you an opportunity to respond to Deshan's question in a minute, but I want to quickly move to Charit, attorney at law. Charit, interestingly, what would be the stand of the NPP if there is a national government that will be formed? Because we saw Omar Sobutera calling for a national government to be formed, and then we saw UNP leader Ranil Wickremesinghe is on the stand that extending the support to the government by refraining themselves from criticizing it. So there seems to be plans afoot to form a national government if at all they won't be moving towards an election. So if that is the case, what would be the role of the NPP as well as the Janata Vimukti Peramuna?
Obviously,
oppose it.
Obviously, our position would be very clear in such situation.
But what would be the position? You say the position would be very clear, so I'm trying to figure out what is that position going to be.
Well, this is something that has not been discussed, and it might not be the collective opinion that I'm speaking here.
Yeah. You can, of course, express your views as a candidate.
Yeah, my opinion, my personal opinion on that would be, let me first say what my personal opinion on that is. My personal opinion on that is that we would obviously be in the opposition, if you're asking our position on that. But secondly, as I previously also said, the provisions are very clear. Now, it's not a time to form new governments, alliances. Section 70, subsection 7 is very clear. It gives interim provisions to act in a situation like this, in a state of emergency. It's not actually a state of emergency, but when there is an emergency situation in the country. Right? So, leave aside formation of a government.
A national government.
A national government. The previous parliament is still there. That parliament can be convened in an emergency situation, and one of the major party in the opposition has now expressed that they would support to reach to answer issues that has arisen because of this pandemic, and we would also obviously support if those provisions, measures are taken for the betterment of the people of this country. We would also support. But then those provisions are for this interim state until the new parliament is summoned. Right? So leave that as it may. Let me come to your previous question as to who runs the country. I don't want an answer for that now. No, actually, I'm not answering. Now, I'm answering your present question with that.
Yeah.
And I asked you, who should be running the country? And the provisions of the Constitution is very clear. The government, there are three parts of the government, three pillars on which the government stands: executive, legislature, and the judiciary. And all these three pillars has to be there. So the country should be run by the executive as well as the legislature. That is the Constitution. So, can one arm of that government forget about the other part and run the country?
Right. So I want to correct myself when introducing Chandan Lena Pallavandi. He's also President's Counsel. Chandan, I'm extremely sorry for missing that out during the first round when the introductions were taking place. So I profusely apologize for that, because usually when I introduce the panelists, I'm 100% sure with how to address them. So I'm extremely sorry. No offense. Please don't take any offense if I did miss out. But I have a question to you. I'll come back to Deshan in a minute. My question to you is, you're a President's Counsel, and you've been in this game for a very, very long time now. Shantanu, interestingly, in murder, you say beyond reasonable doubt, it has to be the intention should be there. So only then can the court of law or the judiciary can pronounce that this person is guilty of this murder in question or whatever it is. That's based on the law practice. When establishing intention right now with regard to the political motives of the president to hold an election steadfast or a snap election was very clear, isn't it? He went on record addressing the SARC leaders saying that we don't have an issue, we'll go for an election. And then he addressed the nation and he said that please give my brother 2/3 majority at the upcoming elections. So all these paved the way that the SLPP really wanted an election, isn't it?
I think I don't see any issue in that because President had sought the mandate of the people when he, in the page number 9 of his manifesto, last paragraph, to have a early parliamentary election. So that was also one of the things that he sought and got. So with that, he dissolved the parliament.
No, but people in Sri Lanka, ironically, don't vote for manifestos. They vote for people, Chandana. You know that very well.
I know that, but it also has to have a meaning in when you think of the constitutional law and the politics. So what I'm saying is, but President did act under the powers given to him under the constitution. So when he did that, and the COVID situation came in, we never expected, and the no legislature can ever think of all the scenarios and then think of 3 months and thereafter another 3 months like that. So we have to find is that is need of the hour. The topic is need of the hour. Need of the hour is to find a solution and to go forward, move forward.
So what is the solution?
Solution is to go out of this pandemic situation very quickly, which at the moment I believe, going by the newspapers and by being in the society, it is at the moment controlled, very much controlled, because we all believe here, we all admit that the society spread is not there. We have identified, we means not the, I mean as a Sri Lankan. The Sri Lanka has really, authorities have really identified the pockets and we now in a kind of a control. So we can, and at the same time, certain districts, normals have been achieved. So only very 2 areas only we have to think about, and thereafter we'll have to go out of this situation and to have the elections, and thereafter the economy has to be addressed too.
You've seen government members of parliament, former members of parliament saying, I've repeated this on the panel discussions over and over again, about if people can queue up in Satosa, why can't they queue up in polling booths? You've seen Vimal Weerawansa, who was a very strong man of the SLPP, saying you can put the polling card into a sanitizer with 50% Celsius, and then it gets sanitized, and then picking it up from a different unit and then putting up into the polling booth. So you've heard all this being said by politicians. Isn't it sad?
No, certainly I don't believe that when you can't go simultaneously with the COVID outbreak and the election, both can't go together. Election, to hold the elections, as these young politicians, my good friends, said, they must have the time to go and campaign. People must have the right mind to address their mind to this, what the candidates are going to offer. So that under those circumstances, first the COVID situation must be eradicated, or at least controlled. It must be controlled. At the moment, I think we are in the right track of controlling. So with that, I'm not saying that we must have the, but we definitely have to follow the health authority guidelines and then have the election.
Isn't it sad the level that the SLPP members have gone into to hold this election as the President's Council?
No, certainly I don't. I certainly don't like when somebody says, have it in such a very light way. No, it's not the light way. It's about the health of the public.
Absolutely.
Certainly, let's first address this issue quickly, go out of it, control it, and thereafter we will have the election under the health authorities guidelines.
Shamir, if I may, I want to. You can pose the earlier question to Tarak about when can we eradicate this pandemic, and then you can move on.
Yes, Tarak, if you can give me a quick answer, how long do you think roughly this pandemic? Do you think, logically speaking?
I'm clearly not an expert in the the medical field or the on pandemics, but what I feel is eradication, total eradication might take a long time.
Right.
Because even in the countries which proclaim to have successfully fought the COVID-19 outbreak, such as China, you still find new cases. It's not about when, but it's about how we would meet this. When there are protective vaccines, when there is treatment after proper research and development, I suppose all in good time, but I don't see that the medical or the medical conditions going down anytime soon.
Right.
At least not for the next 6 months.
I also want to go back to something that Mr. Galhena said in response to Shamir's question. You said you are more than happy as the National People's Power to support any good decisions made by the government in terms of combating this pandemic, and that you're also willing to support in order to provide the people with the best possible as well. Now, part of providing the best possible situation for the people is ensuring that the government governs properly. A government's responsibility goes from formulating laws to financial management. And as a politician, of course, you know that. But then you still have members of the National People's Power. Don't forget, I'm not going to go to Mr. Nanayakala on this because the former government was what he represents. But I want to ask you now, for the 5,000 rupee allowance, yes, it was politicized. It was not an ideal situation. But if you look at the impact it had on our finances, our reserves, it is significant. It is unprecedented. It has never happened before. You had money printing, which was one thing that was done. You have borrowing, which is another thing that was done. And at the same time, you saw, because of the pandemic, global oil prices taking a plunge and going to negative. Now, as somebody who is representing the National People's Power, and I'm sure you know some of the things people or leaders from your party have said, there are some people who say, look, they need to give 5,000 rupees better efficiently, which I agree with. Some saying, look, they need to give more than 5,000 rupees, what can you do with 5,000 rupees? Then they come on a press conference the next week and say, the oil prices are lower, why aren't they reducing the price of oil? Then they also say, if I'm not mistaken, tel mila adu වුණාට පරිප්පුවල ගාන වැඩි කරලා ගාන අඩු කරලා වැඩක් නැහැ. So the thing is, are you guys, or is the National People's Power really being genuine, or are they just trying to create a problem when the United National Party is in government? Are they trying to create a problem when the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna, Sri Lanka Freedom Party is in government? Or are they actually looking for a solution, or do they just live off the controversy?
To answer that in short, no.
I appreciate the short answer, but you have to, you understand where I'm coming from.
I'll answer you. To give a very short answer, no. But let's understand what our role as a party in the opposition is too. Isn't it our role to point out that if the government, if any particular government is doing something wrong, isn't that our role to point out and say that this is wrong?
But doesn't the lack of understanding of governance come from just not being in government? The lack of understanding on governance does not justify being illogical.
Yeah, no, you can't say that. You can't say that because if you look at the election manifesto that we put forward for the last presidential election, and which should well be the manifesto for this parliamentary election as well, there we have addressed all these issues. We have addressed as to how each and every area. If you take education, health,
Mr. Galhena, you're deviating from the question. What I wanted, the question in particular was with regard...
Deshad, you need to give an opportunity to Charit to respond, and then you can pose a question after on 30 to 40 seconds.
Yeah. So, so what I was saying was, now that manifesto was very clear. We have addressed, firstly we have identified the issues, and we have gone to the public, looked at their issues, identified their issues, and then we have addressed, and we have prepared a manifesto. Well, in that manifesto we have said, if there is a government by NPP, how we are going to do it. Right? And then moving on to your question, the issue here is media or the people doesn't look at our manifesto. But then Basically, when we come before media, what is being pointed out is actually the issues, the wrongs that we have clearly pointed out of the existing governments.
Right.
Isn't it our wrong? Isn't it our role as opposition party? I think that is our role.
So,
Just-
Dishan, yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's a very interesting point you make when you say to point out the wrongs. But the question I asked you as earlier was as a responsible, okay, let's put political parties aside. Okay, you make a certain amount of money a month. Okay, suddenly you don't get paid at the end of month, so you have to spend a lot more money. Okay, so automatically there is a diversion from your usual routine. Then whatever income you make, you're going to try to save it. That's just how economics works. What I am asking you as an individual, do you not think that applying that situation, which is essentially what I've kind of done, I've taken the national situation here and put it onto a personal level, do you not think that by constantly just saying, you know, this party is in government, they are fooling you, this party is in government, they are fooling you, which is absolutely essential when you are in opposition, but during a pandemic, do you not think you're just misleading people and trying to foster some sort of resentment, firstly to the former government and now to this one, even in the midst of the pandemic? Is the feeling of we will support the government actually genuine, or is it just something you're going to say to the media?
No, we have been genuine, haven't we? And then, what do you mean by supporting the government? Is it just endorsing whatever that they say or whatever that they do? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think so. It is not endorsing whatever that is being said and done. If you look at even distributing of 5,000 rupees,
Right.
if you look at that, we wouldn't have any complaints with regard to that. If it was done by the officials, the government mechanism,
Yeah.
we have a proper mechanism in place through the district secretariats, through the Grama Sevakas. Had it been done by the officials, we wouldn't have complained. But look at why we question that. Look at as to what we have opposed. What we have opposed is that being politicized. Not with regard to anything else.
Mr. De Silva.
Mr. De Silva,
Yeah.
just a very quick question to you with regard to this 5,000 issue as well, and this ties into the earlier what Tharaka said before about the tone of the Secretary to the President's response to the Elections Commission being rude. And when you look at how the Cabinet spokesperson announced the cessation of the 5,000 rupee allowance program for the coming month, he said that the Elections Commission is opposed to it and therefore we have to stop it. But that's not actually what the Elections Commission had said in its letter. It said you have to depoliticize this because there are complaints of this thing. I mean, it does seem, for the layperson looking in, it does seem that the government, the administration, the caretaker government and the administration headed by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has adopted a very hostile stance towards the Election Commission. Why is this?
I don't think that the government what the government has done is correct. They should have given that money to people, but they have interpreted in a different way. That's wrong, I would say, because the Election Commission has clearly stated that you consider if the situation is controlled and it is proper, or it is okay to give the same 5,000 rupees again. That is, of course, as far as the Election Commission is concerned, is correct. Because they consider if the situation is good and controlled, then there is no necessity. But if it is not up to that point, the government should have taken a decision and say, till the Election Commission comes and say that they are ready to have the elections on a particular day, till that time we are going to give this money to the people.
But Mr. De Silva, my specific question was, don't you feel that the government is being very hostile towards the Election Commission of Sri Lanka and the members of the commission.
Not
because
actually with regard to the commission itself. There is a member concern is different.
No, but if you look at the response of the secretary to the president, Dr. P.B. Jayasundar, the letter that he wrote to the Election Commission, I mean, as lawyers, I'm sure you all know, even when you're in court, adversarial justice system, you can argue different points, but you still be civil and you still be cordial. The communications that are coming from the government to the Election Commission are decidedly not civil and not cordial. This is your problem, you take care of it, we are not interested in working with you at all.
The words
so isn't that hostility?
Used when they are communicating each other is not good. I quite appreciate your view, but the stance that they have taken is correct, because what they said was, the Secretary General has stated was that you have to do the needful, because the President has already taken his duty and he has taken necessary steps with regard to his duties, and now it is your turn and you continue. That is what...
Interesting question that you asked, Mr. De Silva. I want to pose the same question in a different way to Tharaka. Tharaka, this is the day and age that politicians work on this premise. You scratch my back, I will scratch your back. So this may be even a setup. You never know. You write a letter and then someone else writes a letter and says, guess what, we won't send you, we won't go to the Supreme Court based on that. So you can't exactly come to that premise, can you?
Shamir, the era of political deals, the backdoor deals, underhand deals, was brought to an end, brought to a halt and an end the day we established Samagi Jana Balawegaya. We don't do deals. Neither my leader, Mr. Honorable Sajid Premadasa, nor us. We are not involved in political deals, so there is not an arrangement in our part. But I know where you are trying to get at it is not about us, it's about the... I suppose you are trying to insinuate an arrangement between the Commission and the government that I don't know. Okay, I'm not privy to any of those information.
The question you said that in court, the charge should be proved beyond reasonable doubt.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I must say the same thing you. There may be suspicious circumstances, but it won't prove the case.
No, I can
you have to have.
No, we've argued this case over and over
again. You say
that
they must have agreed upon and they send a letter. All these things are suspicious circumstances. Yeah. So you can't do that. If you have material, certainly you can come out. And now with regard to election, I must say we have a lot of material. Past history is there. In 1989, we had the election with the presidential election with LTT is there, and then we had the election. There were a lot of murders, 681, and out of this 681, 63 people are the people who are working.
When was this, Mr. De Silva?
Sorry?
When was this presidential election, was sir?
1989.
1989, that's right.
That's right. So during that election period, we had that experience. So LTT were not allowing us to have.
But it has been established now that this is not terrorism.
No, that's what I'm telling you.
This is
no,
not...
then you can't ask emergency
this is a global pandemic.
No, you can't ask emergency regulations come into power. Yeah. So the same thing, you have to adapt the way that we are going on the basis that it is a pandemic situation where we have to control it. As my learned friends asked, we can't eradicate at the moment, we can control it. Now, who is the authority? As you quite correctly asked, the person who is there is the person who is Director General of the Health. So he should come out after consulting everybody with the health people. He should come out with a solution that we are ready. The situation is ready for the election. Then only the election commission can do something.
Let me twist that question a little bit and ask you another question. What reigns supreme? Is it the people's goodwill in the court of law? What reigns supreme? Tell me that.
That is what you want. I want to say, because at the moment, on a day-to-day basis, on a normal situation, 3 months period is mandatory. It is there for us to adhere to. No, what I am saying is, no, it is not the period. This is not a normal situation. Then only this your question I am going to ask. The it is stated the well-being of the people is the supreme law in this country. So for that, the president is waiting to go ahead with the election after controlling the present situation. So if he is somebody might say if he is violating the 3 months period, no, that is not correct, because he is not purposely doing it. The things that cannot be done, you can't ask them to do it again and again. You can't force them. The law is very clear, and it is done in 1954. 24th of October in Pakistan. So,
Mr. Silva, before going into these legal proceedings and all that, I'm going to pose the same question that I posed Tharaka right at the start. Do you think that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, led by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his brother Basil Rajapaksa at present, do you think that they fear that if the elections are prolonged, if the elections are held 4 to 5 months from now, when a situation of dire straits, people have to face dire straits in terms of getting the food that they have to eat and all that. Do you think that they fear that they might lose an election if it's held by the end of this year?
If they think so, it is wrong. If they think that we should do something to the people and we need the confident parliament and we need more people to be there, to correct people, and we want to work, then that is correct. Because they want to work for the benefit of people. That merely because they fear, that does not mean they should have the election as early as possible. They have to wait till it is controlled and have the election and get a good parliament. Then only they can run the country. It is very easy to say, you call the resummon the parliament. No, that is not the issue here. It is important to have a new parliament, new people, new thinking, and thereafter they can go forward.
So you say that people like Charit and Tharaka have to be
Certainly
there.
they should be there, and as he said, the JVP also should be there, because at the moment, I must say that, at the moment they have the Ratu Balakaya. They are doing a lot of good work, so that they should be there inside the parliament.
So you say that an election should be held and young people like Tharak and Charit have to be appointed.
We need those people.
If you are given the opportunity to vote for one of them, who would you vote for?
No, that is of course different. We have to go through their manifesto, and then only we can do something. Somehow they have to come. They have to come to the parliament. That's a different matter. Whether I am going to vote for them, I can vote only for one person.
Right. So I want to move to Chandana. Chandana, interestingly, I want to go to the War Heroes Commemorative Day that was held just a couple of days ago on the 19th of May this year. The president made a very strong statement. He said that if there is any country that is any affiliation, international affiliations that are infringing the sovereignty of the nation, he will withdraw from those international affiliations. He did not only say this in Sinhalese, he said this in English as well. So the international community gets a message. Do you think that this statement was also made in line with a future election? Because we've seen these nationalistic statements gain a lot of popularity in a country like Sri Lanka.
No, I think he definitely would have thought not about the World Health Organization or the UNICEF. Maybe he would have thought about
the Human Rights Commission.
Human Rights Commission, or maybe even yes, like that. So because that was the line. Because last 4 years, this commemorative day was not held. So this was the first occasion that this particular leader had the opportunity to have it. So I think it has to be viewed in that line. I think what he meant was, if there's any move to punish those who got involved in the Sri Lankan the war against the LTT or the terrorism, that cannot be tolerated or allowed. I think that is the message he wanted to say.
So right now, Sri Lanka is facing economic hardship, and we need the international community to come and help us to recover from this mess, because Sri Lanka does not have the capability or the money. Because we saw former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe making a statement, had said very clearly that the government should come out and state the country's real state of the country's economy as well. So, do you think that such a statement will not give us an edge in terms of attracting foreign direct investment to the country?
No, I think anybody who understands politics will understand that it was said in that scenario, because it was said we have to think about the venue and that the occasion. So I don't think so. When it comes to the foreign direct investment, they think of the concessions given in that country and the workforce and like that. So I don't think. I don't think that he aimed at. I don't think the Honorable His Excellency the President aimed at any particular country. I think that particular organization. I think that was the thinking.
No, but there are many dependent countries.
Because if you see how the America and the other countries are reacting to the Human Rights Commission when they are dealing with Israel, it's totally different.
No, but the question, that's a very good point, Chandana, because you, I think, hit the nail in the head. The United States can afford to withdraw from the Human Rights Commission or the Council because they have the money to afford. But Sri Lanka is not so.
Certainly, we will not be able to withdraw like that. But what I'm saying is, it is a political statement.
So it is a politically
motivated statement, because when you think of the occasion, it was aimed at saying that don't touch the boys.
So Taraka, political statements are being made by the President, political statements are being made by a majority of the SLPP members, but we still don't see the Jatika Samagijana Balavege coming as a formidable force to contest an election. They are being in the back foot, hoping and praying in the guise of a Supreme Court ruling. Guess what? If things work out, we will contest. If things don't work out, we won't contest. We will always take a step back and not geared up for an election whatsoever, unfortunately. Why is that?
Shamir, I don't think that reading is accurate, to be very frank with you, because we, as Samagijana Balavege, on the one hand, we are expected to act as a responsible opposition. So we are taking a back foot and trying to support the government in whatever the positive decisions that they have taken. Now this 5,000 rupees incident, 5,000 rupees distribution, if you take it, there have been so many manipulations. If the people who are in the government right now were in the opposition, they wouldn't have allowed, if we were in power, they wouldn't have allowed the local councillors to be in the deciding committee. They would have got people to protest. We could have done the same thing. There are hundreds of complaints in each electorate of people. We only had to say, board tika karagena, we will go and do a protest. We only had to tell them, let's make some placards and go and protest. But we have not done that. But having said that, we have, as a new political movement, we have started establishing our grassroots level organizations using adhering to the health regulations. It's a very tricky situation for a new political party to establish themselves in the grassroots, but fortunately we still consider ourselves UNPs. More than 90% of the active card of the UNP are with SJB, so the mechanism is there. But let the election come. We will, will show you how we will fight.
But do you think, Taraka, that what the SLPP did, the magic that the SLPP did during the local government elections as well as the presidential election, do you think that the Samagijana Balavege has that popularity to pull the rabbit from the hat?
Shamir, SLPP had about 2 years to grow in the opposition, and the bond scam you spoke of and several other incidents you spoke of, whilst respecting all the great achievements of our Yahapalana establishment, created a very good scenario for the SLPP to come up. So likewise, politically, you see a government in place who reverse each and every decision, 90% of the decisions they take. I don't need to draw examples, starting from the public statement of His Excellency the President of not locking down the country at any cost. From that particular decision, the reversals have been so many. And when the election comes, we will see, because right now, Shamir, we are focused on the country at large, the general public at
Now, why I'm
large
posing this
being
question to you,
protected.
Tariq, is very simple because we saw a similar mix in 2015 between Maithripala Sirisena and the UNP-led SLFP at that time. Didn't work out. We saw in 2002 Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga as the president, and then we saw Ranil Wickremesinghe as the prime minister. Only lasted for 2.5 years, didn't work out. And you all now want a mandate, again, something similar. Why would people vote the Jatika Samagya Balawege in with failed attempts of coalition governments being in active presence in Sri Lanka?
Shamir, you have to look at it in the light of the 19th Amendment. Now you see we accuse the President of violating certain constitutional provisions, not convening the Parliament, because why? Parliament is, the President is clearly accountable to the Parliament. Article 33A of the Constitution through the 19th Amendment says Presidency is responsible and accountable to the Parliament in the exercise of all his powers and duties. So that is only one provision of the 19th Amendment that I quoted to you. So likewise, it is the President. What we have to understand is clearly now the President is the head of the executive. There are no two words about it. And we are going to ask for a mandate to run the legislature. Clearly, what you pose is a question that many voters might have in mind. Right. But if the government of the day, the President's government, has failed in so many aspects, yes, they have contained the spread of COVID-19. We commend them on that. There's no two words about that. But are they capable of handling the economic crisis?
So I have a question for
Shamir,
Mr. De
Shamir,
Silva as well as
Shamir,
Chandra.
may I
Yes,
also
of
comment
course.
on that same issue, because you have mentioned two scenarios, so that's two specific instances where Madam Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga was the president. There have been a different political party was in the
operation or in play at that time.
And recently we have that experience that in 2015. That is the mismatch. That is the very wrong in the Constitution, because Constitution is, because they are electing the president and tell him, you elect your members who will form the government from those members. Yes, that is okay, but elections for the president is held on a different time. Election for the parliament, to elect the parliament members, is having on a different time. So that is the mismatch. That is what I am saying, because this was done in 1948. That's the 1978, because at that time, Honorable then Prime Minister, Mr. Premadasa, was very powerful within that political party which came into power in 1977. That is why to give him a place, that post was created called Prime Minister. When there is executive president, why do you have any particular post called Prime Minister? And why do you? So that is what the President-elect, because he is bringing up a program. So he can't perform that particular program because there is a different set of people are in the parliament. That is why I said this particular system is not the correct system.
Right. So I have a question for the two of you, the two Presidents' Council. I was just thinking about it yesterday, so I'm going to pose this as a question. So we know the 19th Amendment to the Constitution clearly says that there is no 3 terms for an individual to become the president of the country, and that is why Mahinda Rajapaksa remains today as the Prime Minister of the country. Am I right, Mr. De Silva and Chandana?
Yeah, President, it should be only two terms for the any particular individual.
So my question would love to have an answer from the two learned President's Council. Now, in hindsight, or
another important thing, with regard to 4.5 years, also they have to reduce to 2 years.
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
That should be
right.
Because at the moment, earlier they have considered it,
right.
But unfortunately it has.
So let's say this shouldn't happen. God forbid if it happens. Let's say something happens to the sitting president right now, that is Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Because
something
under the I'm just saying hypothetically. I'm just trying to figure out the constitutionality of all this. So does that mean that Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa cannot become the president of the country? Because in 1993, when the assassination of Rana Singha Premadasa happened, the Prime Minister of that time became the President of the country. We saw that happening, and D.B. Vijaytunga was the president for nearly
certainly.
3.5 years, despite the fact that he said that he will call for snap elections. It did not happen. So, in these circumstances, do you think that the SLPP has violated the constitution once again by appointing Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Minister?
Let's forget about SLPP or whatever the political party. There is a president in power at the moment.
Okay,
His brother is the Prime Minister. Okay, yes, twice he had been the president.
Yeah.
He did not contest last time because there was a constitutional prohibition. True. So then that is to get elected. That is election at a presidential election. Here is a situation where if something happens to the sitting president at any given time, if the Prime Minister who is there in the parliament, who had twice before the president, is not getting elected, by operation of the law, he being named as a Prime Minister for the rest of the period. That's all. So that's the difference. He's not getting elected. He's being, by operation of the law, he's getting into that seat for the remaining of the period.
He can't contest as a candidate.
It's not
He
getting
can't
elected.
contest. That's very clear in the constitution.
That's right, very clear.
Right. So thank you very much, the two gentlemen, for enlightening me on that. And I presume that the people would have also been enlightened who are watching this show tonight on TV1. So I want to drag my attention to Charit Galhen, attorney at law. Charit, before I wrap tonight's show, I want to go in for a last round for each speaker to make their closing remarks. But I thought I'm going to give an opportunity to Taraka and Charit to enlighten about your policies, because this also should be a platform for you to enlighten the people who are watching this show tonight about what difference would you bring in if you are elected to the next Parliament of Sri Lanka. So I'll start off with Charit, then I am going to cross over to Taraka. I'll give you around 2 to 3 minutes to respond to that, because with the permission of the two President's Council who are not contesting the elections. So yeah.
But we will also have to say what we would expect from a next parliamentarian.
Absolutely. So we'll give each and everyone 2 minutes each to respond to that, and then we'll go for a final round on Face the Nation tonight. Yes.
Answering that, as I previously also said, MPP policy is very clear. Our manifesto in detail has dealt with that. We will be standing for the values that we have mentioned in our manifesto, especially with regard to the education of this country, education of the people of this country, and then the health sector. If you look at the COVID-19 pandemic situation that the country faced with, we came out of this situation, if we have come out of it, we came out of this situation mainly because of our health sector. So one of the areas that we have stressed in our manifesto is that public health sector has to be strengthened. And we have specifically said, and we have to start with the village hospitals, with proper facilities being given. So those are two areas. And then the other area would be agriculture. Now we have in this pandemic situation, in the situation of the lockdown of the country, we have seen in Facebook, in social media, of the need and the people looking at a economy based on production, and that is what we have stressed in our manifesto. Apart from those things, we might, whether we might form a government or not, would be something for the people of this country to decide. But then, if we are elected, we would stand for those values that we represent. And apart from that, we would stand for the democracy of this country and safeguarding people's rights, and to establish an independent judiciary in this country. And for all those things that we have stood up for.
Are you saying that the judiciary is not independent now?
It is independent, but recently, if I may quote, there were certain, even in your news, we saw that government ministers targeting attorneys at law, even President's Council, who has made representations for certain parties, even in the cases that are before Supreme Court today. And we have seen this trend, especially when the SLPP is in power.
Right.
Lawyers are being targeted. So there is a need for people to stand up for that.
So just for clarity's sake, I just want to remind our panelists today, the views that you're expressing are solely based on your personal opinions and the party's view, and not the view of the network. So I want to move to Tharaka now. Yes.
Shamir, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss policy, because this is something we don't get to touch upon in public media forums. So firstly, I personally believe that in Sri Lanka the problem is not the education but the talent mismatch. So we have to look at our curriculums not only in the universities, not only in the A-level classes, not in the ordinary level classes, but we have to start right down from the primary education or the nursery level. Because as a country, we have a very rich history which we often boast about, but do our people have the same commitment? Do our people have the same attitudes that our forefathers would have had 2,500 years ago to create architectural wonders, to create very complex agricultural and irrigation systems? Do we have the right attitude? I believe that from the very primary education level, we had to look at attitude change of attitudes and attitude development. Then B, innovation-based development and industrial niche market targeted industrial activities. Then agriculture modernization, because whatever we say, it's an agricultural country where vast majority of the population to date are dependent on agriculture when you go to the rural areas. But we can't carry on the same agricultural practices that was carried out 100 years ago. We have to go on to agro-based industries. We have to go on to preservation of agricultural produce, reduce post-harvest damage. There's a lot we can do, and with the conducive weather conditions in our country, I believe strongly that we can cater to the global market in a much larger way and uplifting the lives of the rural general public, which I particularly represent. And finally, we have to revisit our poverty alleviation strategies. We have been doling out money ever since independence. We have been doling out, which is good, because of which is sometimes the sole reason of survival for certain poor communities. But we had to go beyond that. We had to go look at uplifting their lives, not to live on the dole forever, not to live on Samurdhi or Janasavi or whatever you may call it, not to live on it forever, but to raise their standards of living by encouraging them to maybe become entrepreneurs, become agriculturists in the modern way of things, or to basically create mechanisms to uplift the life of the poor. Those are few things.
So you speak about architectural wonders, and I want to drag your attention to the Mahinda Rajapaksa era, where a lot of highways was built, and even during a pandemic was taking place in Sri Lanka, they allocated 31.7 billion US dollars to construct the central highway. So they are trying something, isn't it?
I think they are badly mixing up the priorities at this particular moment, because if they allocate that kind of money for research and development or to uplift the health facilities, yes, we would agree wholeheartedly. But yes, we do need the highways. There are no two words about it. We need a strong transport facility. I mean, that the highways system would be a very attractive thing for the investors, but this is not the right moment to invest 31.7 billion.
Mr. De Silva, now you have an opportunity. You just heard the two young gentlemen talking about the manifestos. Have you yet made a decision or not yet?
Sorry?
Have you yet made a decision to vote for either one of them?
Either one of them.
So what do you expect, Mr. De Silva?
we have started this parliamentary system in 1931.
Right.
So after Donamo system, we started this and we came long way, and 1978 this constitution was enacted, and thereafter we had this 1981, one of 1981 this election laws also came into power. So on that basis, at the moment we are going on the according to the laws available in this country. If the constitution says something, it is there, then we have to adhere to that. We can't interpret in different way, only the Supreme Court can do that. We can express our views, and my learned friends also can express our views. Ultimate result would be the Supreme Court will decide what to do. And there also they can't change the constitution. What the Supreme Court then can do is they can interpret in the way that they think, then we have to accept that. So that is how it goes. On that way, we have to go through this. And what I say now, we have to think loud and think out of box and see whether we can do the elections in a proper way. Right. So 7.1 million, Shamir, including you, 7.1 million people are in the internet, and 6.7 million are there in the Facebook. So they can do a lot of wonders when they are doing their campaign. So I must say, we can't change the direction of the wind, but if we adjust ourselves, we can reach the destination that we want.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Silva. I want to come to your closing remarks in a bit, but I have a counter question for you, unfortunately, before I move to Chandana. The number of people that you're talking about who are with internet connection and also on Facebook are not Sri Lanka's total number of eligible voters. You are aware of that?
But they are in the family, so they can give these things to the elders also. Okay, you must remember that.
So I now move to Chandana. Chandana, what do you expect from a new parliament?
Certainly, they have to work very hard, because if you consider the work of the parliament, it is under Article 75, it is to make laws. You have to make laws to uplift the country's citizenry. And I want parliamentarians to work towards creating the Sri Lankan nationality. It should not be just a section in the Citizenship Act. I want them to love this country, and yes, of course, there are geographical realities, there are neighbors, while having connections with the neighbors, but at the same time, I want them to know that who their real friends are. So they are not there, even the opposition, the parliamentarians are there not to just pull down the government in power. I think they must work and come before the people at the next election after doing their real part. I think I want them not to be sold to other certain underhand powers.
Right.
I want them to be very straightforward, strong people.
Right. So we wrap the few rounds for the Q&A and also the views expressed by each one of you. So we go in for a short commercial break. We are in conversation with President's Counsel Chandana Liana Padipedi, President's Counsel UR De Silva, Attorney at Law Tharak Nanayakara, as Attorney at Law Charita Galhena. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. President's Counsel, Attorney at Law Chandana Liana Padipedi. We now move our attention to Attorney at Law Charita Galhena, contesting under the NPP ticket at the upcoming elections. Charit, do you all fear that the NPP, together with the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, will even lose out of the 3% votes that they were able to garner at the last presidential elections? Do you think that there is a problem in even getting this 3% at the upcoming general elections?
No, we don't fear. Shamir, you should look at it in a different way, because these are two different elections. That was a presidential election and this is a parliamentary election. Presidential election, the mindset of the people and the way the people would think is totally different to that of a parliamentary election. Parliamentary election, people elects the candidates whom they think that they should represent themselves in the parliament. When it comes to a presidential election, people would elect one person out of those people who would contest. And there, the contest largely would focus on two main candidates.
At the upcoming elections.
And then,
Do you all fear?
and then thirdly, government has lost its popularity. Even at the time of proclamation of dissolvement of parliament and the election, government was losing its popularity. And then there are new situations that the country and the government is faced with. Now this is connected to your first question as to who runs the government. Whether one person can run this government. People would come to realization that one person can't run a government, even with the secretaries appointed from his past military associates. Country has to be run in a democratic manner. People's issues has to be addressed in a democratic manner. And mainly, what we have not realized, even from the 2018 incident where incident of 50 odd days government, is that constitution would vest certain powers. But vesting those powers doesn't mean that a particular person is vested with unfettered authority. These people who hold offices, even the President Rajapaksa, is holding a public office.
Right.
What the constitution expects is the executive, the legislature, the commissions and all these public officers to work together.
Thank you very much.
For the interest of the people.
Yeah, thank you very much, Attorney at Law Charit Galhena, contesting under the NPP ticket. We now move our attention to Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Council and former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. De Silva, I'm posing the same question that I posed to Chandana. We are right now in standing on a ledge. We don't know whether we have to hold an election or embrace an election, or we have to get out of this COVID-19 pandemic. In your opinion, what must the government do? What is the topmost priority for the government right now? Is it protecting the people, or is it going for an election?
No, firstly, as I told you earlier also, we have to control this COVID-19 pandemic, and then only we can go forward. Now,
But you say that the pandemic has been controlled now.
That's right. What I say is, first priority, they have given it. Then now they know that it has been controlled, but they have to wait till the people who are there controlling the issues, and then they will come out with the story that whether it is proper to have the election. So the Director General of Health should come out with a solution how to conduct the election. Then only this powerful body, whether we like it or not, whether they are inside the commission, whether they are quarreling each other or not, it's a different matter. They should come out with one story, whether we are in a position to have the election. So they have the power, though it's an independent commission, they don't have to answer to the parliament. It is not there. So that is the only commission that had been exempted from the answerable things. So other commissions, of course, they are answerable to the parliament. This, of course, is a powerful body, and they should take decision and then show to the country that we are in a position to go forward. Then only the government can assist, because it is quite correctly pointed out in the Constitution that under Section 33 of the Constitution, it is the duty of the President to have a platform. So that what he is doing is that. So when he is doing that, somebody might say that he wants the election. That does not mean he wants the election immediately, but he has to have the platform ready to have the election. So once it is ready, we must go for election and elect the people like these two and to the parliament, and if they are ready to work hard, we need those people. That is why we say the old parliament should not be convened again, but new parliament should convene as soon as the election commission says that they are going to have the election. Then it is the duty of the president to give the date to summon the parliament. He will do it, and thereafter we can see the parliament is functioning.
So thank you very much, Mr. De Silva. So when you say young people have to be elected to parliament, must the majority be from the SLPP, the Samagi Jana Balavege, or the NPP, or the SLFP? Or
People will decide.
People will decide. Thank you very much, Mr. De Silva, former president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, President's Council. I now move my attention to Attorney at Law Tharak Nanayakara, candidate contesting under the Samagi Jana Balavege. Tharak, if my mind is right, just going back to history, you've always been a UNPer. That there is a certain section in Sri Lanka, you know, when you say Kapuat Kola, you know, their blood is UNP blood. That's what they say, you know. I don't believe that, but that's what most of them say. You've been predominantly a UNP member. Aren't you sad that you're contesting this time around from the Samagi Jana Balavege, a breakaway faction of the UNP? And do you think that this may result in the Samagi Jana Balavege not being able to garner the allotted or intended number of seats in parliament?
Clearly, Shamir, it was a very difficult, very sensitive decision to leave an establishment, a party that you have given your youth. Fully, I have left my legal practice twice for this party, for the UNP, to run 2 presidential election campaigns. And but however, it was a very well thought out decision, and I wouldn't want to call us a breakaway faction, because a breakaway is when 10 people go where 90 people remain. But here, out of the sitting MPs, except I believe slightly under 10, the rest, well over 70 MPs crossed over to the Samagi Jana Balavege. Then out of the 160 electorate organizers like myself, well over 95% are contesting this time from the SJB ticket. So clearly, this is the dawn of a new era. This is the establishing of a new political movement with the values of the forefathers of the United National Party, starting from Right Honorable D.S.N. Nayaka, down the line of leadership. But this is a new movement where there are no political backdoor deals. This is where the modern UNP will be. At heart, we are always UNPers, and this is a move which became necessary as certain elements in the United National Party did not want to give way to the popular opinion. However, we will fight hard for the people of this country. We will fight hard to protect the values of the United National Party and go forward as a very modern political movement and strive hard to get back into power.
So just to figure it out, so Charit is contesting from the Colombo district, and Tharak is contesting from the Hamaradu electorate.
Galle district.
In the Galle district. So super. So thank you very much, Charit Galhen, attorney at law, contesting under the NPP ticket for the Colombo district at the upcoming elections. Thank you very much, attorney at law Tharak Nanayakara, contesting under the Samagi Jana Balavege from the Galle district. Unfortunately, the preferential numbers are not out, or else we would have announced it today on the show as well. So that is why individuals like Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Council, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, and also President's Council Chandran Lenaparabali said that ample time should be given to individuals of this nature to do their campaigns ahead of an election as well. So thank you very much, the 4 gentlemen, for joining us this evening on the show. Despite the fact that we've done a remarkable job in controlling the COVID-19 pandemic, we are far from out of the woods. So that has to be established. We have to rise as a nation and start fighting this pandemic more vigorously in the next few weeks to make sure that we can one day say, guess what, Sri Lanka won the battle against COVID-19. Thank you very much, Deshan. Thank you very much, Nadeem, for joining us this evening on the show. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Elections are won by men and women chiefly because most people vote against somebody rather than for somebody. Thank you very much. Take care and good night.